Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today's going to be a really quick video going over all the books that kind of got me into reading when I was younger. So these are like nostalgic for me. I'm not saying they're the best books by any means, but I do think if you want to help your children to read, let them read the books that interest them, which is what my parents did. And I also was not an early reader. I started reading books when I was probably like 9, and it took me forever to figure out how to read. And then when I did, I could read like whole books, but it was like all or nothing for me. Like, I don't get it, to like, oh, I can read books now. So it was probably frustrating for my parents, but they kind of just let me read whatever was in the house. And then when I went to like a bookstore, they would just let me pick out what I wanted. So thanks, Mom and Dad. Anyway, let's start with, okay, so the first book is gonna be Mandie. This is a series. This is Mandie and the Secret Tunnel, but this is a whole book series. I think there's over 30 books. And I remember being like super into these. I loved the whole series. I think I read up to like book 37. And this is about a girl who is like, I think this is set like in the 1800s, maybe early 1900s. And this is like Nancy Drew style mysteries. She has, in the first book, her dad dies. She goes to try and find her uncle who has also died. And then she's trying to find his will, and there's this big mystery about what happened to the will, and is it hidden, and you know, what happened to him, how did he die? So yes, that's the first book, and this series is fun. I feel like it was, there's a lot going on with this, but yeah, I liked it a lot at the time, and I definitely loved the whole like aspect, like the mystery aspect of it. And she has a lot of friends. She has her friend who is like her friend from back where she was from, Joe, who will be a main character in the books, and then she meets a new friend, Polly, and then she gets a whole group of friends around her that help her with these mysteries. Okay, so that's that one. Next, I'm going to go over briefly, but I read the Chronicles of Narnia when I was younger. These are just a couple of the books, but I have the whole set over there. So the one that I feel like sticks out the most from my childhood is going to be The Voyage of the Dawn Treader, because I read this like in my room with the lights out, with like a sheet over my window to like keep the light out, and by candlelight, because I wanted to imagine I was in like the bottom of the ship with Eustace, who's writing, like some of the narrative is done from his perspective as he's like in the bottom of the ship and he's feeling miserable. So yes, I was very into this. I was like a big nerd, and still am, but I felt like that was like my like full immersion with that book. I was super into it. But I love all the Chronicles of Narnia, and I highly recommend, because I think it's just a great series, and kind of concerned about what they're going to do when they adapt it for Netflix, but that's another story, another video, possibly. Anyway, the next book series is going to be Trixie Belden, and I never read Nancy Drew because this is a very similar like style and very similar storyline as far as the mysteries and the young girl who can solve them. Trixie's younger, but these are what I read because this is what my mom read. So I was, she definitely was like, oh, read those. These are better than Nancy Drew. And after reading Nancy Drew, I still prefer Trixie Belden. I just think they're more fun. You have the group of kids. It starts off with Trixie, and then she meets a young girl who's just moved to the area. Her name's Honey. But as the books progress, you get more and more people joining their little like mystery solving group, and really like it. Very fun, cute mysteries. And I like the characters. Okay, next. Now, this one has a horrifying movie adaptation that inspired me to read the book, The Princess and the Goblin. And if you know about the animated version of this, it's like nightmare fuel. I don't know why. It's so weird. It's so like, it's not like disturbing and weird and cool and like Secret of Nim kind of like territory. It's just weird and like off-putting as an adult. But The Princess and the Goblin, I really like this. I read this when I was younger, and I just thought it was great. It's obviously like the princess, and she starts to suspect, and there's a little boy that's with her called Curdy, I believe, and they both start to suspect that these goblins are, you know, coming, and that there's a problem with the goblins who've like been kept down and are supposed to live under the earth, but like that they might be trying to plot something. So anyway, fun book. And then also my family was super into Little House on the Prairie, the television show, and so I did read Little House on the Prairie and Little House in the Big Woods, which is this one. I read the whole series, and I don't remember most of it. I do remember this one more because if I'm remembering right, I remember this one more because Yes, this is the one where they like, okay. So this one sticks out to me in my memory because there's like a Christmas scene in this one that's very like, oh, it reminds me of winter and it's delightful, but they slaughter a pig and then they like use the different parts, like the dad blows up the bladder and ties it into like a balloon for them to toss around, and like delightful and horrifying for a child. I was like, oh, they're just using all the parts of that pig, but like that's the way to go. And yeah, some of the parts of the pig were toys. So it stuck out to me. I was like, oh yeah, I remember that book. So yeah, definitely one that influenced me when I was younger, and I really like the whole series, but yeah, I remember this one the most, I think. Okay. So I'm gonna wrap up on the American Girl series, and this is like, I read these are all like in pretty bad shape, but my original collection I don't have, but I have a few of the Samantha books that I bought recently, and I was a huge fan of American Girl, but Samantha in particular, because I had this doll and I loved, this is like the girl who's in the Victorian era. I was obsessed with the Victorian era. I wanted to live in the Victorian era. I had like a Christmas party themed around Victorian era, like everything. I was so into it. And like now I look back and I'm like, of course I would never want to live in the Victorian era. I feel like this was a very romanticized era. Like you get the whole like, oh, it's nostalgic, and there's this like, you know, the men are all gentlemen, and it's like very, you know, the women all have the pretty dresses. And I do think this one is has an interesting storyline, enough for kids anyway. I believe her uncle is one of the characters, and then the girl that he's like gonna marry is part of the like suffragette movement and is fighting for like women's rights. So, you know, they were trying to incorporate a lot. Good on you, American Girls. But I read these, and then I later read Kirsten, and then Molly, and then Felicity. And so these were like a huge part of my childhood, and getting the American Girl catalog and just being like, oh, this is like the best time of my life. I had this doll, and then later I got Kirsten. So that's a little bit about me. But anyway, yeah, those are just a few of the books that are like my nostalgia, my childhood reads. Let me know what you read when you were younger, what got you inspired to read. And yeah, just let me know in the comments what you're reading. And there's definitely a lot more books I could be talking about. So if you're interested in knowing like other books that I read when I was younger, or books that influenced me or I feel like impacted me as a reader, let me know. And I'll talk to you in the comments. Bye.